What is going on, Big Baller Nation? We are back for the Week 3 recap of the fantasy season. Before we get into the matchups, we have our trade insider in the building to discuss some recent trades. Adam, please don't be a fucking weirdo today.
Thanks, Steven. I'll keep this brief because you guys are annoying and also because these trades mean nothing. Our first nothing burger was Ish trading Geno Smith to Alejandro for Dak Prescott. Lame. Then we had Peter trade Josh Jacobs to Gabe for Miles Sanders. Peter makes his 0-3 team a little bit worse. Okay, bye guys, I gotta go. Me and Ian Rappaport have to go get facials together. Bye, yeah.
Jesus Christ, that guy is a freak show. Sorry, folks, we're going to get into the matchups now. Colin, take it away.
Thank you, Stephen. Firstly, I want to discuss an exciting matchup between two teams who were both 500 and looking for a big win to set them to 2-1, and that's the matchup we had between Gabe and Angel. Gabe saw big games from his elite QB Kirko Chains, Miles Sanders, and Michael Pittman, while Angel was led by his receivers Marquise Brown, DK Metcalf, and even found 19 points from his kicker. Ultimately, this game ended up in a relatively close 16-point margin of defeat for Angel as Gabe chugs forward for his second win in a row.
While we're on the subject of two great teams, I want to discuss the matchup between Jackson and Alejandro. Both of these guys were 2-0 coming into Week 3, and they participated in a hard-fought battle decided by 6 points. Ultimately, Alejandro beat Jackson to stay undefeated after a huge game from Tyreek Hill and solid performances from his running backs DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard. Jackson had good performances from Sam Laporta, Jalen Hurts, and his kicker Jason Mayers, but ultimately his team faced a loss after leaving a lot of points on this bench this week.
I'm going to go ahead and cover the two mollywhoppings we saw this week. Two different undefeated teams both beat their winless opponent this week. The first matchup we'll discuss is between Brian and Ish. Brian is without a doubt the chip favorite. His team is firing on all levels, as we nearly saw him reach 200 points this week with big games from Devontae Adams and Raheem Mostert. It's important to remember he has won the last 2 games without Austin Ekeler, so we may not have even seen his best performance yet. Ish, on the other hand, is in a similar boat to Peter this year. Despite putting up solid points each matchup, his opponents have just simply been better each week and led him to an 0-3 start, despite his roster being better than that. The other mollywhopping we saw was Robert annihilating Alex. Robert is a close second to Brian in terms of dominance this year as he put up just under 170 this week. Robert found huge games from Kenneth Walker, Deebo Samuel, and Justin Jefferson. He will surely be a force to fear come playoff time. Meanwhile, Alex had a pretty decent week for his standards, but overall, he's still the worst team in the league. His star players, Joe Burrow and Derrick Henry, have yet to find their footing this year, and even if they do, the rest of his roster isn't very exciting. I doubt Alex finds himself with more than 3 wins at the end of the year.
This week we saw Armando finally pick up that first win after beating a Jonah team that's spiraling downhill after a solid Week 1. All 3 of Armando's receivers, A.J. Brown, Mike Williams, and Stephon Diggs, has huge games, as well as his quarterback Lamar Jackson. Jonah, on the other hand, really only has impressive games from Mahomes, Amon-Ra, and CMC. Luckily for Jonah, Alvin Kamara is done with his suspension, and having him in the starting lineup could potentially bring back the Jonah we saw Week 1.
Finally, we have reached our game of the week, a matchup between a winless team who scored the 4th most points and a team looking to prove that their last win wasn't a fluke. Of course, I'm talking about Peter versus Zach. Peter is no stranger to putting up points, and this week he found 20 points from Deshaun Watson, James Conner, Chris Olave, and Travis Kelce. Peter even found 15 points from his kicker and his defense. Unfortunately for him, this game was over long before Monday night. Zach found an insane 48 points from Keenan Allen and Josh Allen, and the Bills' defense combined for 62. These huge games, combined with some other solid performances, gave Zach a narrow 10-point victory to push him to 2-1 while Peter continues his losing streak.
What's up, everybody? I got your Fresh Power rankings ready this week, and we are definitely seeing the top teams begin to materialize. As I said last week, Brian, Robert, Gabe, and Alejandro are all playoff locks. Jackson and Zach are currently my favorites for the wild card spots, but I expect to see Peter, Ish, Jonah, and Armando fight for those last 2 playoff spots as well. All right, y'all. Thank you for having me. We'll all be back next week, but now it's time for a brother who really knows ball to spit some game at you.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Brian's Prediction Corner. It's not really a corner anymore. I'm in my own place now. I'm sure you all know this because you totally care about my personal life. But we are back. Just took me a few weeks. But let's make some predictions. First matchup of the week, we have Alejandro versus Angel. Angel's awful. Angel's team is awful. He drafted the worst possible roster I've ever seen in my entire life. Somehow, some way, the man who drafted strictly Cowboys is 3-0. How Alejandro has done this, I have no clue. But the Alejandro Cinderella story continues for another week, and I think he will win to improve to 4-0. Next, we have Gabe versus Robert. 2 notorious powerhouses. Robert has a really strong team. I think they scored 100, almost 170 last week. He has Trevor Lawrence, ETN, Ken Walker, Debo, Justin Jefferson, Christian Kirk, and the list goes on and on. Gabe isn't too shabby, isn't too bad on his other hand, too. He has Kirk Cousins, Brian Robinson, Chris Godwin's a bum, CeeDee Lamb's a great target, Josh Jacobs, we'll see how he does. But I think Robert's just too overpowered for Gabe, and so therefore Robert will continue his win streak as well to be 4-0, joining Alejandro. Game 3 of the week, we have Alex versus Armando. This is the tank ball here. Alex's team is 0-3. They cannot manage to win a game. To be fair, it's not really his fault. Joe Burrow, underperforming. Derrick Henry, underperforming. James Cook, who gives a fuck? Amari Cooper, been all right. Jamar Chase, underperforming. Mark Andrews, just not good enough. Armando, on the other hand, Lamar Jackson, average. Najee Harris, awful. Kyren Williams, we'll see how he does for him. It's been better recently, but you never know. Higgins has been bad. Diggs has been good for Armando. Ferguson has been decent. Michael Thomas has been okay. He has A.J. Brown, which is an elite weapon. And his best player is probably Jake Moody. Simply because the fact that Alex's team just isn't good enough or hasn't shown up yet, I will have to give the win to Armando. The fourth, I don't know, I'm done counting, is Ish versus Zach. Coming into this year, I would assume that this would be the tank bowl of the week. You know, Zach's notoriously awful at what he does when it comes to fantasy. He usually can't draft well. He usually can't make good trades, can't make good pickups. But somehow, some way, he's on a 2-game win streak and is 2-1. Ish, on the other hand, keeps starting a guy who's not playing. He benched him this week, but, you know, Joe Mixon, Ish's second-round pick just hasn't been good enough. David Montgomery, you know, Jacoby Myers, not good enough. Waddle, good player, probably his best player. Kittle's just an average. Thielen was good last week. Lockett's okay. Ish just doesn't have a good enough roster at the end of the day. And Zach, somehow with his lineup of Kyle Granson, Tank Dell, George Pickens, but to be fair, led by Josh Allen and Aaron Jones, is going to come out with another win, improve his win streak to 3, and go 3-1 on the season. Then we have Peter versus Jonah. Just for the sake of both of these teams playing, I hope they both lose. I'd like to see both these guys get last in the league. Sadly, that's not going to happen. May happen for Peter, may not. Peter runs this issue where he says, oh, I had the right players, I'm not playing them. Well, half of fantasy is playing the right players, Peter, so learn how to be good at this. But I would assume, just because Peter's team isn't good, from up to downs, Watson, Connor, Sanders, Collins, Olave, Kelsey, Madison, Garrett Wilson. I mean, actually, I lied. Peter's team is pretty okay. But he'll mess up. Someone on his bench will play well, because they always do. Someone on his starters will just fail. And sadly, I think Jonah, who has Mahomes, McCaffrey, Kamara. This is 2 different clips because my libtard phone will let me send a clip over 4 minutes long. But the game that we're all looking forward to this week is me versus our host, Jackson Thorpe, and our commissioner, sadly. Jackson has some elite players, like the best quarterback in the league, Jalen Hurts, one of the best receivers in the league, Devontae Smith, Sam Laporta, who's been amazing, Zach Moss, who's getting a majority of touches, Rashad White, ASU legend, Gabe Davis, ass, Hawkinson, very good, solid tight end, Pacheco, great flex position for Jackson. How Jackson isn't 3-0, I don't really know. He's probably had some, poor. Hurts hasn't been ideal. His performances overall have not been up to par from last season, but it's still been a great quarterback. But Jackson's just not beating me. I have Herbert, Mostert, Stevenson, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Dallas Goedert, McLaurin, Tutu Atwell, Austin Eckler's coming back this week. My bench is fucking awful, but that doesn't matter because we're 3-0. Then I'm going to be 4-0, and then 5-0, and then 6-0, and then you know what? I'm going to stop there because knowing now I'll probably lose these next 5 games and I'll look like Peter last year, but hopefully not. But thank you all for watching this week's Prediction Corner. Just know that the one thing I can guarantee for 100% fact is that I am winning this week. Jackson, love you, but fuck you.
Brian has spoken. Big Balls Productions.